Hi, welcome everybody for our final event of today's Festival, part of Department of Dreams. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for those people who've been with us throughout the day. Our final session is with the glorious Aliyah Hasinah, who has curated some of the events during the festival. Tonight, we are going to be seeing a series of short films from artists from across the world that will be envisioning new futures for us to imagine. And these shorts are going to make us think about the potentials of the futures that we can live and work in and socialise in. So before I hand over to Aliyah, I'm just going to do a brief introduction. Aliyah is a curator, a writer, a filmmaker who is practicing, her work focuses on decolonial practices to the history, to the present day. She's currently the partnership manager at MAIA Creatives, and at the moment she's spending a fair bit of her time, in fact a lot of her time, working around UK BLM. You can follow Aliyah on social media on Aliyah Hasinah. We'll share the links in the chat. And Aliyah is joined by Adeyemi Michael, who is a multi-award-winning filmmaker and artist. His work deals with reimagining the African experience, as well as social status and the criminal justice systems, and how all of these intertwine together with race, gender, and class. So without further ado, Aliyah, I'm going to hand over to you, and I hope you have a glorious evening chatting and talking about the potentials we can imagine in the future through film. Thank you both.
Thank you so much, Nikki B, aka the realest G. And shout out to Civic Square for all the work that's happening in the narratives around what's it called, reimagining, that we're seeing this week. This work is crucial to how we move forward and how we envision a new future instead of assimilating into a broken one. I'm really excited for tonight. Wagwan Adeyemi, how are you doing?
What's going on, man? I'm all right, you know, as all right can be in this current moment.
I hear that.
Obviously, you know how it's just it's a moment of sort of like realization for all of us in many ways. But like this is stuff that some of us have sort of known about for a while. So and you know what I'm talking about.
So around as well.
Exactly, yeah. That's what the work's usually about. So it's not new for us, you know. But I guess it's a moment, isn't it? It's a moment of awakening. It's a moment of realization. Especially in this moment of like quarantine. It's crazy that this is all happening, but it's just, I mean, it's not unfathomable actually, in a way. As dark as things have been for centuries, this is not like, this is not out of the ordinary, really. It's
been a long time coming. And I think
exactly.
One of my favorite ways of...
How are you though? I mean,
man's alive, innit? Man's alive. And like you said, this is work that we are dedicating our lives to, have been doing. It's nothing new. It's just these moments of inflammation draw new attention to the existing work, or they should draw attention to the existing work. And I'm sure we'll get into a lot more of that a little bit later. But we're here to talk about dreams and narratives today, and how that, especially during this time, can like really lift us to a different space. I know like we're both people who like feel things very deeply and a lot, and can be like very much overwhelmed. And so film being a medium of like portraying that. And so we're gonna have a little bit more of a chat and a Q&A, which people feel free to like send us over your questions. But we're gonna start quite relaxed. I love watching films, especially like short films and conceptual films. Adeyemi is one of my favorite filmmakers. Sorry to guess you, but like it's the truth. And
you're too kind. You're too kind. You're buttering me up still. I know it's your birthday in a few weeks, so don't worry, I got you though.
But without further ado, we're gonna go and look at some of the work of Cecile Emeke Balogi, and then we'll be playing 2 of Adeyemi's films. And then we'll have a little natter about it and a Q&A. So that's the format for tonight. I'm gonna pick up the first film, which is a piece by Cecile Emeke called The Ancestors Came. It was commissioned by Tate. and is just a really beautiful piece of work that I would love us to start watching. I'm going to turn my camera and mic off throughout the duration of it being on. Grab some popcorn, grab your tea if you don't already, people at home. Like, this is film night, but like with a little bit of a twist via Zoom.
When the ancestors came to help the children wake up. I will always remember when the stars fell down around me and lifted me up.
Where's she from? Bronzeville, I think. Is that what they're made of? Yep. No, she says she's from Harlem. What are they made of there?
I loved to listen to the adults talk. People would travel from the south to the north. It would take them, a couple of months to get from Florida to New York. You know, you didn't just get on a plane and fly to New York. You might go all the way out west working on the train and then get out there and have to do something to get some bus or something to pick you back here. So when you got here, it was a long story about the adventure. And these people would just appear because nobody had a phone. We had them in the lobby of the building, yes, or on the corner, but not in your house. Well, I mean, you do have a lot of power when you're an artist. You can actually do what you want. You don't need anyone's permission to do it in any way. Now, will you? That's the problem. You're going to try to think of what they're going to like. All I know is what I like. And if I like it, then that's it. That's where I go. When I'm left out, it will be with the full knowledge that I did it my way. I didn't do what somebody else wanted me to do and got left out too. Ooh, wow. I'd be very upset about that. Well, no, I did not feel part of the group, and I wasn't. But that's okay. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere, okay? So, you don't want to accept me now. You're going to have to later. I'm not going anywhere. I am determined. Hide, little children, so that you can be free to be. Free to be.
And so that's our first film. The second one we're going to move on to is Balogi. Pierre du Genre. Basically, I'm really bad at French on it. So this is one of my favorite short films. And yeah, we'll discuss a little bit later, but let's get into it. It's a music video for context.
Est-ce que l'on peut joindre le futile à l'agréable avant qu'il ne se réduise à une peau de chagrin? Est-ce la chair ou le corps qui est faible? Cette traversée du désir t'épuise le bassin. Avant de prendre tes jambes à mon cou, avant que le rouge ne te monte aux joues, tu mènes les épaules à me cheviller au corps. Pas cette passion énergivore, jus de poignet, vapeur de stupe, des draps souillés, sans amour propre, moment d'égarement, désir impatient, le goût de la nouveauté, de l'enchantement. Est-ce que l'on peut joindre le futile à l'agréable avant qu'il ne se réduise à une peau de chagrin? Est-ce la chair ou le corps qui est faible? Cette traversée du désir t'épuise le bassin.
Surtout ne pas se laisser envahir.
Est-ce que l'on peut se goûter l'âme du bout des lèvres avant que cette affaire ne tourne au vinaigre? Murmure, soupir, inaudible, délicate, morsure, volupté indicible, avant de se loger dans le duvet des aisselles. Faire de ma salive aquarelle, grain de beauté, constellation, disparaît sous la paume, sueur, traction, le sang qui bat sous mes tempes, cette lubie a une taille de guêpe de nymphe, tu me finis sur les rotules. La bouche en cœur, fais-moi croire que tu capitules. Est-ce que l'on peut joindre le futile à l'agréable avant qu'il ne se réduise à une peau de chagrin? Est-ce la chair ou le corps qui est faible? Cette traversée du désir t'épuise le bassin.
Chérie, mole mananga, olingoranga mukarame, nalela yo, ndenya love kila molema.
Est-ce que t'as le cœur bien accroché? Débauche de sens, intention cachée, bouffée de chaleur, force centrifuge, déguise la sueur en purge. Est-ce que deux corps qui s'encastrent sont pour autant soudés l'un à l'autre? Est-ce que la mécanique du cœur s'enclenche comme un réflexe épidermique dès que l'on s'épanche pour ce magnétique bouton de chair pour lequel je suis la cheville ouvrière?
n'y a pas d'amour que des preuves d'amour. Le corps est une preuve d'amour.
Bleu de nuit. 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 Ce ballet est statique. Éloge de l'ennui à deux. Bleu de nuit, bleu, 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 bleu de nuit, bleu de nuit, bleu, 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 bleu de nuit, bleu de nuit, bleu, 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 bleu de nuit, bleu de nuit, bleu, 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 bleu de nuit, bleu de nuit. Laisse-moi au bord de l'abandon. Si les mois donnent le bourdon, une main posée sur le périnée pour prolonger ce vol synchronisé. Équipé sauvage, le corps à l'ouvrage, englué dans la moiteur. Le temps de reprendre des couleurs. Bleu de nuit, bleu, 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 bleu de nuit, bleu de nuit, bleu, 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 bleu de nuit, bleu de nuit, bleu, 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 bleu de nuit, bleu de nuit. Morsure de l'ennui, de l'ennui.
Esa linde, kochikala nanzela na kosuelo kote na puiko punga nzela.
Sorti de la cuisse de Jupiter par une phalange brûlante. Ton plaisir est solitaire, même tes pupilles s'absentent. On s'unit comme on se vautre. L'orgasme ne vient pas de l'autre. Le blues des corps empêchés, c'est de l'égoïsme partagé. Mais mes arguments, tes attributs, le vertige qui me donne la berlue, berlue.
Suffit pas juste de bander.
Naye koyemba moto ezozokisa motema pepa na yo lokola mwa mopepe na tolo nanga.
Bleu de nuit, bleu, 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 bleu de nuit, bleu de nuit, bleu, 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 bleu de nuit, bleu de nuit, bleu, 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 bleu de nuit, bleu de nuit. Morsure de l'ennui, de l'ennui.
Esa linde, kochikala nanzela na kosuelo kote. Eseza pokote nzoto echwaka bienga na yo. Ezosala ke tokanga na lokola ndeba suda biso.
L'amour est un lieu avant d'être un lien, un endroit plus ou moins lointain. Mais il n'y a que les souvenirs qui sont fidèles à la mémoire. C'est pourquoi on se partage ce territoire. Toi, moi, toi, moi. Et chaque fois que tu reviens sur les lieux, tu me vois comme tu voudrais, mais pas comme je suis. Celui des souvenirs, celui des premières nuits, bleu de nuit. Chez les hommes on dit que le corps se recroqueville, redevient carcasse, redevient coquille. Quand les épaules sont des forteresses, mon corps entier n'est plus qu'un aveu de faiblesse. Attraction, répulsion, le corps est démuni. Après l'exténuation, la mécanique nous trahit. Réduit réduit à sa plus simple expression. Quand le tatami n'est plus qu'un lit pour grands brûlés affectifs, cachés derrière des draps et des poncifs, forcément ébranlés, forcément vulnérables, petite mort inconsolable.
Pourquoi tu te laisses pas aimer? Pourquoi tu reprends ce qu'on te donne?
We're getting on to Adeyemi Michael's work, who we'll be talking to shortly and who you've already been introduced to. And this film was debuted on Nowness.
I do believe that the act of creativity is a spiritual provocation. Even when you look at traditional art from Africa, a lot of it is a spiritual manifestation. My creative process starts with a sketch. I'm always thinking, and I live more in my head than I do outside of my head. There's an expression that says that the sitter gives the photo, not the photographer taking the photo. So the relationship between myself and the model is quite important for me. My main focus is not the sexuality of the woman or the exotic sense of the woman, but it's really presenting the woman with a very fierce and very strong, intensity. She's like a reflection of me, is how I see it. In a way, she is the portal sort of for my visual diary and my experiences. When I'm shooting and creating this work, it's like a trance. What's important for me when we're shooting is really not only energy, but the sharing of love, because it's almost like moving with one body to make this whole thing come into reality. When we're drinking coffee together, when we're eating together, so even my son will make a contribution to that. We're functioning with a sense of purpose, and that purpose is how do we make something magical happen. The link with nature is quite important. And as Africans, we're connected to nature. I live in an area which is basically we're on top of the mountain. You hear the hyenas, especially if you're, near the forest and so forth. I'm an urban person, but I like the serenity of being within nature. The best times for me, for my solitude, is really like when I go on these long road trips. You just have the earth, the sky, and you within that space. And that means that you're confronted to go inward, especially when you're encountered with the silence of the audio and the silence of the visual. The role of art as a form of advocacy for me is quite important. I wanted to utilize my art for a sense of purpose outside of just hanging my work, on white walls in galleries or museums. It was really important for me to do the water life collection for WaterAid. I'm looking at a very specific issue, which is not having access to direct water as actually having an impact on the society. I chose a Danakil because it's almost like poetic to me, but at the same time, terrain that was very difficult to shoot in, to really understand how people live in these conditions. And that emptiness, almost like painting on a white canvas. I think think as artists, one of our key roles is really to share not just our ideas, but also certain issues that are in contemporary Africa. I dig deeper within myself, and as I present what is inside of me, it resonates quite broadly to the audience, that people find these connecting points. The true testament of an artist, in my opinion, is when you break boundaries and when you express an idea that is able to provoke the onlooker. I've chosen to address specific things, especially around the issues of women. Just as we have, the challenges of the continent, we also have the beauty of it, and we have the history, the heritage. There's so many components. The key thing is, I'm not here to provide answers. What I'm trying to do is really to shift the perception and to present it in a way that they haven't seen before.
And our last film for tonight is also another film by Adeyemi Michael that was done for Channel 4 Randomax.
The name that I was given when I was born is Abosede Afolashade. That's, my origin. That's where I've come from. So one can never forget one's roots. It's like a tree, isn't it? Because if the tree doesn't have a root, it will fall down. It won't survive. Omosi Abini Ojo Isemi Abosede Afolashade means my wealth is my crown. Pípé ní apá kan Nigerian ni mí, lápá kejì British. It's weird. I don't know how I can explain it. Having two places. So, in a way, I feel happy. I mean, even living here, we still do things that we do in Nigeria, i.e. when people our children are getting married or having a celebration. And it's the people that make the country, not just the country makes itself. ká má ṣe gbàgbé ọmọ ẹni tí àwa ń ṣe.
But I hope you guys enjoyed some of the short films that we just watched in helping us to envision what else is possible. Moving forward, I'm going to jump straight in, Adeyemi. And you've seen all of those films before? Or some of them? Obviously, 2 of them are yours.
I've seen Cecile's. I've seen Cecile's. That Baloji film I haven't seen. I've seen his other one, which was at London Film Festival earlier this year. It's like a longer version of something similar, because yeah, it was off the back of a music video. It is a music video for one of his EPs, and so I've seen that one, not this one. But yes, it's dope. He's definitely got a distinctive style, and his conversation is pretty consistent in terms of what he's trying to talk about with his work and stuff. So
yeah, and I love.
So yeah, yeah. So I have seen 3 of those films, at least.
And so I'm going to get into your work shortly, but with the Baloji film, for example, watching it for the first time, what are some of the things that came to mind, even if they were just like initial responses?
I guess one of the things that I feel really binds together all of the films really is this feeling of deep spirituality to something that is not physical, you know, and I feel like oftentimes than not, when the work sort of lingers in that way, like especially when it's sort of like artistically generated, like Cecile's film is made in collaboration with the Tate. I saw in the corner. I think I remember it being part of that big exhibition some years back at the Tate. I forgot what it was called now. But yeah, I feel like, you know, all of the films have this sort of real sort of connected feeling to sort of the spiritual space. And actually, when looking at Baloji's film, I'm looking at stuff that, you know, I'm trying to, where is he? Is he from Côte d'Ivoire? I know he's from a Francophone speaking country.
So that film is,
Congo.
Yeah, he's Belgian, Congolese, and a lot
Yeah,
of that
I remember that.
is looking at the Pygmy people and their like wedding rituals. And yeah, just some of that like, heritage.
Yeah, and
into like modern day narratives and conversations as well.
Yeah, and so, you know, pulling on that, you can see that's where he's pulling from, you know, like, but from a very sort of traditionalist sort of spiritual space. And I feel, you know, not that you have to be someone who is spiritually inclined, that you are so focused on church and all of that kind of stuff. But I feel like with the work that I'm interested in and the people's work that I'm sort of really often looking at is their work usually sort of sits within that space, and where you're pulling from tradition, where you're pulling from things that were before you, and that although you're making it in this moment, that your ancestors live within the work. Like you see that in Cecile's film as well, like where you see the older woman in the film, and so and I feel like when you're looking at the sort of through line between all of them, like even with Ida's film, Ida talks about her process. You know, she talks about it in a way that is from a space of spirituality. When you see the final film, there is that element. It's sort of like something that exists beyond the image, really. And I feel like when people go deep and try and, because when you look at the Cecil's film and you look at Baloji's film, you can see the personal in there. And so even though, like, I don't know whether the old lady is in her film, the grandma is someone who's related to her. I feel that it is something that's connected to her, which in some way really sort of stands out to me, you know.
It's almost like that thing of us all being connected, whether we're like of family or not, and that being the power of spirituality, as like we're all essentially spiritual beings. It isn't just in the ways that we've been told spirituality is, whether that's like through Islam, Christianity, Judaism, finding those systems or those beliefs that really continue to top us up in terms of our mind, body, and spirit. And art and film being one of those ways of feeding spirituality. I think that's something that's really beautiful in Cecil's film, where like the elder woman was basically saying like, you don't need anyone's permission, and that like kind of being repeated. And I just wanted to like ask what your perspective is on that, just that phrase, and how we craft futures moving forward, or how we as like Black people create.
I mean, that phrase is really very true, first of all. But I think the structures which we've been sort of groomed in, whether that be at home, be in Africa or the Caribbean, exists within this sort of permissive state where we're constantly waiting to be validated or told that it's okay to exist in a particular way. And I think that's something for me that, I mean, I've struggled with it to a degree, because I think the key is here, when you watch these films, all of these films you can feel the authorship, you can feel that this is from the hand and from the voice, the specific voice of these filmmakers, right? And so I feel like that phrase is really important for us to not really to undo the work that has been done. Because as we're seeing right now, like in the world that we're living in, this system that we exist in, right? This bigger system, this sort of capitalist model, this model of white supremacy, as much as you might try and fix it and change this and change that, we seem to keep on coming back to the same thing and the same argument, right? And so when you're asking for permission within a system that is designed to silence you and not give you the opportunity to just be a whole being and whole artist, whole human, really and truly, you know, it's not really possible. So it's important to sort of like, you know, affirm that amongst ourselves and within our work, you know, that you don't need to ask anybody's permission. Like, and I'm saying this from a place of, okay, I've been working in the industry for some time now, and separating work versus the projects, you know, that really speak to me and speak to like who I am as an artist and filmmaker, they're very different. I've made a lot of stuff that is on television, and you know, that's my main source of income. And so, or has been my main source of income. And so, you know, just trying to understand that those things are separate and you have to divide them. But like when you are making work for yourself, that you don't need to ask permission. You know, you really don't. You don't need to wait for the institution. There are other ways, and especially because of the fact that, you know, we live in this sort of digital landscape now. It's just like, you know, the autonomy really sits with you if you want it to. You know, you can really control the narrative. You can control how you disseminate the material, you can control how you can even finance and fund your projects, you know. And I think, you know, less of the idea of undoing what has been done, but like actually let's just be brave enough to start something else, you know,
and create something, and like put our imaginations or our dreams or whatever is in our imagination into the medium of film. And we'll talk about like form and genre in a little bit, but I just think what you said really spoke to the point you're making earlier about like spirituality and the feeling of being whole in order to not need like permission necessarily. I'm a big believer that everything we need is already within us, and like sometimes we just need it facilitated out or drawn out in a particular way, and that sometimes art can be that medium, or like a great mentor can be that medium, or a film or like something can be that medium that like shifts us into movement, particularly in this moment of time, like how we start to reimagine these futures or like what's possible. It's something that sort of like shakes us and moves us forward. So I just wanted to comment on that point of it like being the topping up of spirituality that makes us feel like we're enough to even move forward in that. We spoke a little bit earlier about like the importance of form and genre. Do you want to speak a little bit more on like how that informs?
Yeah, because I think, I guess for me in terms of process, you know, like, hey, I feel like in terms of undoing what is already there and what has been done, in terms of these structures and systems, in terms of how people understand material, right? How people come to material, especially when it comes to sort of film, and then especially when it comes to us on film, right? Like the way people respond to Black bodies on screen, specifically, and African narratives and Afro-Caribbean, African American, you know, however way you want to identify it. I think we need something new, and we need something that does not exist within, you know, systems and structures that were never, you know, paid mind to us when they were being built and set up. In fact, they were sort of, you know, trying to, you know, keep us down. So for me, I feel, you know, when people ask me, for example, like, oh, you know, so what was that film that we just watched? You know, like when people first saw Entitled, you know, and I was very, you know, when it comes to making the work, I'm very hush about it, because all I care about is just doing it, and just like, man's just ready to lick shots in it, basically. I'm not on the kind of long thing where people are like, you're talking about XYZ, because oftentimes they're not, you know, you end up even not making it happen, or other things come up and all the rest of it. So I just want to just get the work out there. And so, you know, back to the point anyway, like, I feel, you know, when people saw that film, they were kind of like, oh, what is this? How do we put this in this space? Oh, this is how we understand you. We understand you, especially because of the way I speak and because of where I'm from, or not even where I'm from, but then where I've also grown up. Like being a Nigerian born, you know, South London raised, Peckham man, like people expect a specific thing from me. And that's even our own people as well, you know. And I think sometimes, you know, I feel like with the work and my process, what I really care about is, when it comes to genre, is breaking all of that to bits, you know, like completely dismantling it in a way that, like, oh, why do I feel this way? But you feel this way because, one, it's not even dismantled, it's a completely different thing. And two, there's sort of this element of deep spirituality in my work. You know, I don't sing and shout about it, but oftentimes and not, I'm channeling, you know, I'm channeling ancestors, I'm channeling other things, I'm channeling
stories, you know, and the provocation, right. And like that
exactly
being a way of getting forward, like the nuance in like Black perspectives or Black experiences. We're so used to seeing a particular like genre of like Blackness, but again, that is always seen through like the white gaze. Like you said, when it comes to the form that like we see Black bodies in, it's it's always so polarized. It's never in a space of like comfortability, or for the most part, in terms of when we're talking about like in the mainstream, it always has to be very like overtly politicized or like angry or like upset. And I was working on a exhibition looking at just platonic intimacy in Black communities, and just what it means to be Black in mundanity, and like the everyday thing, going to the chicken shop, like going to...
I was just about to touch on this. Like, this is just, you know, and that's what, you know, I feel, sorry to cut you, by the way, like, my bad. I just got excited. that word, banal. The moment you drop the words banal and mundane, like, and we're talking about us, I feel like that's just where, you know, I really, because when you see the elder in Cecile's film, that's an image that I understand. I've seen that.
Yeah.
You know, like, I've seen it on a date. Like, I could see it weekly, and in that, there's just so much. There's something very new about that. There's something very new on camera that is about that, but it's existed. So when you're talking about futures and where we're headed to and what we're trying to do, you know, in terms of storytelling and, you know, Afro-Caribbean Black narratives, we need to look at those little bits in between, because oftentimes and not, if you were trying to go all the way up here and tell this sort of macro, sort of really loud, you know, noisy story, you're doing what the sort of, you know, the system that has been oppressing us has been doing. They're used to doing all of the stuff in the top and the stuff at the bottom. And unless it's like poverty porn, or it's like excess wealth or excess success, they're not interested.
Violence.
And so it's important to unlearn all that stuff in the middle. Is new. It's so new and it's so fresh, and it's just waiting for us to just sort of like unravel it all, you know.
And that's what I love about.
And so for me, when you're talking about, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, and that's what I love about like Baloji's like film. It's showing not necessarily like a pre-coloniality, but just like a way of being that feels fantastical, but it's just everyday. And so it's like through that you're showing a very different portrayal of what like wedding ceremonies would look like for us consuming it in the West, but you've also paid homage to the ancestors, and you've also brought something completely different aesthetically to how we're going to process that tradition moving forward. But I interrupted you, what were you saying?
Yeah, so what I was just basically saying is that often when you see, for example, you know, there's a filmmaker called Alan Gomis. He made a film called Félicité, and it's very much about that story in the middle. It's about this singer, you know, and she's just the mundane nature of her life, and just the sort of from the minuscule thing, like when it's the same with Atlantics. I'm not sure if you've seen that as well. It's like the power of that film sits within that, you know. There's another film I recently saw in Berlin. Like, I will go out on a limb like right now and say this is one of the best Nigerian films I've ever seen. You know, like it's called Eyi Mofe is the name of the film, and honestly, these guys, they just nailed it. And it comes back to the thing that we have in common is that these people have made, Black people, African people have made this film themselves. When you look at Cecile's film, when you look at Baloji's film, there are things that are in there and just nuances and gems and diamond encrusted goodness,
even down to
that
the
cannot come from the white gaze. It just can't come from the white gaze. And so again, it's just, how do we realize those futures is just by us doing it, by us understanding it's the stuff in the middle, the stuff that we may have even overlooked as well. You know, like, I feel like Entitled is a very different piece to the conversation I'm making, but the next few films I'm making is really about that. You know, Entitled is really, yes, it's about the mundane nature of my mum's, you know, existence within Peckham, but then in this sort of like fantastical way, right?
Yeah.
That said, that's something we haven't seen before as well. And so, and in a way, it's kind of like a stab at the establishment as well, like a huge one. It's not even a stab, it's like, it's man just pulled out the pumpy and just went spraying everywhere. You know what I mean? And just was like, bun you lot.
Necessary.
Bun the rest of you. Yeah, just bun it all down. I don't care. And so, you know, sometimes I feel it's important to to exist within not even sometimes, the majority. I think that's the answer to your question, is really about how do we not exist within, okay, this is a documentary, this is a drama, this is like a fantasy sci-fi, like, because all you're going to be doing, you know, because a lot of the stuff I'm watching, I have to be honest with you, I'm only watching stuff that that speaks to the work that I want to make. Yeah. I'm not out here watching every single kind of like thing that's out there, like, because the establishment says you should, and because it's the thing to do, you know, like, I really
take in as well. The importance of that, because like there's the importance of curating what you take in, especially because we've been overexposed to like lovelessness within Black dialogues, or like hyper like sexualization or hyper violence, and so like consciously not buying into those things or watching those things because you want to imagine something new is one of those like coping strategies in a way.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you know, I think given the time that we're in right now, like, let's just talk about that. Like, you know, let's talk about it. Let's talk about how much more powerful it is to see something much more mundane. And here's the thing, and I really wanted to touch upon this whilst we're here. I mean, this is not about filmmaking, but this is about imagery, right? When we see and have seen, and this is going back to the spiritual thing, right? There's something that really rocked everyone when everyone saw George Floyd, right? It's not just about the physical act that we see, but there's something that is, I don't even know how to explain it. Like, it's spiritual to a degree as well. That really, I don't know, it bodied a lot of people inside.
It reverberates, like,
you know, and
spirit and their life being taken away. Of course that's gonna like
totally in
some way.
And so this is why it's so important that we have to curate what it is that we make as well in the correct way. Because if we continue to perpetuate this image of ourselves being on road, running around with straps, getting ducking, that stuff spiritually depletes us. You know, we have to think about this very consciously, and it's very important position to be in. There's a huge responsibility we have, and so when it comes to depicting ourselves, whether it be for work or it be for, like, you know, a personal project, a passion project, you have to make a stand. Like, you have to say, okay, well, this is not for me. I'm not gonna cross this line. I'm not gonna be going and just because I want the approval of this system and this person, go start working on some BS that doesn't allow us to see ourselves in new ways, not even in new ways. Because, you know, this concept of reimagining, why are we reimagining? Why are we reimagining what they've got? Let's just imagine. Let's just imagine and say, okay, this is what it is. Because when you imagine the banality, like, it's there, it lives there. Like, it's not, even when you're watching Cecile's film, it feels dreamlike. Pardon?
We never see it as worthy enough of a storyline because it's not like over polarized, and like the aestheticism we always see connected to Black bodies, like, is going to inform, and I think that's where the term reimagining comes from, because like for so many of us, if we haven't like done the work of not just decolonizing our minds but knowing that there's an alternative, it feels like a reimagination instead of an imagination. Because when you're on survival mode or you're constantly like taking in trauma, your imagination is limited, and that's just like scientifically speaking. but no, I completely hear you on the point of like reimagination. It almost feels as if it is like centered around the white gaze of us.
Yeah, and that for me is really important. I mean, sometimes I guess language is one thing, but it's then about, you know, what's your, not just your ideology, but what's your rationale? You know, like I really, when I'm making my work, my process is really rationale driven. Pretty much everything has a meaning, like, but then, you know, there are times where things happen in a myriad of ways, you know, in a way that is driven by flexibility, because I've come from documentary. And, you know, when you're making documentary, there's a sort of spontaneity that exists, and there's being open to things occurring and happening, and, you know, for things to just play out sometimes. Because again, that, especially when it comes to us, like, and our stories and the stories that we tell about ourselves, there's a lot of beauty and joy that cannot be captured in a moment that is too synthesized, too curated, you know, and too, you know, like that is so harsh. And then you have to ask yourself the question, so, but who are you curating this for? Like, who are you trying to make it palatable for? And so yeah, so for me, I'm really interested in trying to step away from that. And, you know, I love work when it's not done by actors, for example, at times, you know, and the work that I do plays with that sometimes. You know, it's like, you know, my mom, everyone in that film is, and in Ida's film again, you know, they're us, they're real, they're, you know, they exist, they live, they breathe.
What's the process like from like ideation, or like that idea arriving in your spirit, to like post-production and then it going out? What does that look like for you? And I know there's probably a lot of huh? Is that
that's a beautiful way of putting it, in terms of, you know, does it enter the spirit, you know, does it enter, because, you know, at the end of the day, the moment it enters my spirit, I believe at least I know I can allow it to touch other people. Because if it's moved me enough, being human, it says, okay, this thing is worthy, go, like, you can do this. There are times where that, when that is not listened to, and you can see, yeah, the work didn't fully reach because the spirit wasn't speaking, you know, and it wasn't ministering, you know. And I'm not talking about spirit being in like a church way, hallelujah, Jesus kind of way. I'm talking about something else. Do you get what I'm saying? And so I'm talking about us, the original, the core. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, I'm not talking about Sunday service. So, you know, from that point on, I guess it's from that then to usually, you know, a treatment document. Oftentimes, and not, to be honest with you, I don't really want to do one. You know, I don't really want to put it down like that. I just want to just arrive with it. But the reason why I've sort of come to that process now, where, you know, I usually don't write scripts. Okay, I stay away from over blocking, you know, and over
processing.
Again, synthesizing in a way. Yes, I have written scripts, but even the scripts that I've written, I believe there's so much flexibility in push and pull in them. Yeah, I usually start with like a treatment document that's usually quite visual, and then I just then start referencing things that kind of like concern us. Yeah. It's not just about film. It's not just about, oh, I saw this film and I must reference this film that was the film that had, you know, I don't know, Taraji P. Henson in, or Gabrielle Union, or, you know,
it's not all
like,
about influences.
Poitier. No, it's not really about that, because my influences are coming from other places. You know, it's like Entitled. It's coming, you know, it came from me looking at certain images, right? Like, and paintings, in fact. You know, I'm really fascinated with looking at, you know, different forms and playing with the concept and mediums specifically, not forms, sorry. We're going to come on to the concept of forms and how I differentiate that completely separately from my process. But yeah, I think it's important to take from the world that we live in, and the things that sort of like that make us make our hearts pulsate, you know, and allow us to live. Like, it could easily just be me looking at a youth just riding down the street on his bike, or just watching an auntie get on a bus.
In terms of like, the role of using like children as not only like signifiers of the future, but like as a symbol of like softness in your films, particularly entitled. It's one of the things that like brings the intergenerational thing in for me, where it's like, rah, auntie on a horse, hold tight her, and then it's like the impact she then has with that little girl seeing her on the horse, and that being something that like rocks your spirit.
Yeah, I feel like when it comes down to it, it's like I think it's really important to place the things that we know exist, but also the things that we want to see. And I feel like, you know, again, going back to process, for Entitled, that image had been in my mind for years. Okay, I knew what that thing was. I knew exactly how it was going to be, which is why, for example, if the people that know the treatment, they look at the treatment was pretty poxy, to be honest with you. Like, it's not really about the treatment, it's about what was here, you know, and what was here. And so, you know, and then what was around us, the spiritual, you know, us being spiritually encompassed by this thing that was telling us, okay, let's go and do this. This is what we must do. I'd spoken to my mom about it years previous. We sat down, she said, whenever you're ready, my son, you know? And so those are the things that, you know, allow for us to, when we now then see the little girls, because the little girls weren't part of it in the beginning, but then that came as the process started to roll, you know, about, okay, so what is this dealing with? I knew I wanted to deal with this sort of there's like 3 generations in the film. You see the little ones, and then you see the younger girls playing, when the people who look up, you know, and then you see my mum, obviously. What's that? Hold tight. I know. Yeah, no, that's it. And so when you look at it all, there is that sort of like intergenerational nature. And it's funny because even in Ida's film, there's probably, I wouldn't say not knowing, but like, you know, we pulled Ida's family into, not even family, she pulls her whole family and network into the work that she does as well. And I think that's a really important point, you know, when making the work that we do, and the way in which we have had to make it over the years as well, because of, you know, the budget constraints, because of the fact of having to try and be more creative and all the rest of it. But going back to your point about like seeing little girls and stuff, yeah, I think, you know, when you look at the work is coded, but it's for you to now watch and be like, okay, what is man trying to really say to me? Because some people like, and you know, I want to talk about erasure as well. I've had white people, okay? I had a white woman who I knew, okay, whilst I was at film school. One of my tutors, she said to me, I saw it at like a little function last year. Oh, Adeyemi, what a lovely film that was that you made. And she was like, she said to me, your mother, she was, oh, great. But that horse was fabulous. And I'm like, is that all you saw? You saw the horse, like. But then there's other people who will see much more than that and will unpack. Yeah, and so this is the thing. It's like, again, you have to ask yourself the question, like, who are you making the work for? You know, and be always know, even from all the, some people just see horse. Some people refuse to, but that's a different conversation.
And some people see our whole lives affirmed by that, like the simplicity of just being represented.
Exactly. But I really do feel the process for me is really about first spirit, but then it comes back down to like, how do I feel? You know, it always comes down to that. It really comes down to, you know, the spirit's affecting me, but like, Yemi, like, what you really saying? Like, how is this reaching you? Like, you got what I'm saying? And it's just, it comes from that place first, and then manifests itself within structures of production and all the rest of it. But like, to a degree, everyone's thinking, oh, it's this document. But in my head, I'm like, you lot, be on the document, innit? I'm glad that you've got something to guide everyone, but like, that ain't it. There's something else here. We go, this is where we're going. I'm gonna pull this out of it, and you lot are gonna be like, oh, raw, actually, yeah, like, now I see. And we're about to like make a film that's kind of similar, really about, it's just, I mean, it's labeled as like, you know, sci-fi, but it's something else to me. So, you know,
so
yeah.
To you?
Pardon?
You said it's labeled as sci-fi, but it's something else to you. So what is it
for me?
And then if you could also then like go on to explain.
Again, it's really about sort of imagined futures, but really it's, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, and then like go into explain like what you mean by like form plus genre, and how this might like illustrate like stepping outside the normative boxes.
So for me, this film is sci-fi is the way in which the system understands it, and the system will finance and fund it, right? The system will say, okay, great, this is a film, that's a sci-fi film, we'll give you the money, go and make it. But I'm like, in my head, I'm like, no, this is like, this is code. You know, this is like, you know, when you see in that film, they do that, it's just, it's encryption. It's QR codes that, and you can't even scan this code as well. Like, it's one of those type of things. So that's how I see it. It's like, it's the matrix. It's the numbers. It's to this and think, oh, I'm watching this because everything that I'm doing. If you can see it, oftentimes they're not great, but it's not everything that needs to be explained. And so this film has that as well. And so when they put in, you know, those tags on it, whether it be a genre tag or form tag, I'm kind of really like, okay, you know, like, if that makes you feel better and that makes you feel more comfortable, then great. But
do you think those tags limit the imagination of being able to like reproduce and create new futures?
I think they do. I think within the parameters of thinking, let's just do this. Go to Africa. Okay.
Where?
Go to any village. You know, they'll tell you about the sort of elements of spirituality and the way in which people practice, and there's certain things that happen maybe in a particular village or in a particular place where, and I'll give you an example, something I'm working on right now. I'm trying to see how to explain this, where there might be a spiritual thing that happens, right? Like not an affirmation where a person turns into a goat. Try and tell them man over here that this thing's real. Like for the people over there that are doing it and are living it,
yeah,
it's a completely different thing. It's not whether you believe in it, but do things like that happen? Hey, maybe, probably. So you can't discount it. So often I see the system as being like, okay, no, this is this way, it's this way and only this way. And why is that? Because it allows them to control. It allows them to manipulate, aggregate, hold people in specific positions, and some in certain positions and some not. And so, yeah, I think that's why it's limiting, because that's why we see, for example, everyone's always talking about, for example, the film industry, right? And that's what is on everyone's lips now, about all these corporations as well, and all of these institutions. And when you look at their setup, certain man just getting paid to send emails. Do you know what I mean? like, you know, and that's the reality. But the moment when it comes down to it, those structures allow for those things to exist and for them to stay in a particular position. And it's the same when you look at, you know, film as well. Like if we had, I don't know, like work that's formless, and I kind of like to think of my work as that, to be honest with you. I'd much rather, and have I fallen into these tropes as well? Yeah, of course, because we live within the system, you can't not. And so, you know, I feel like, you know, when people, you know, saw entitled and they're like, oh, they heard fantasy documentary, they were a bit blown. I'm like, that's just for you lot to even try and understand. If you can't even understand that, like, I can't help you.
But that's your own thing to figure out. Like art, the point of art is for everyone to get a different interpretation of it. So if that has blown someone else's mind, but someone who's more proximate to the conversations that it's discussing will be like, oh, it just added into a like vein of thought that I'm already on type thing. And then for some people, they'll just see a horse. So it's just like, it really is going to affect everyone else very differently. And I think that's the power of not having to over explain, like you said. I want to like touch on one of the things you said about like the industry and like the fact that in the current moment we're in, everyone's trying to support and say Black Lives Matter and all these various different, and we'll see like slogans and we'll see whether they weather the test of time.
Basically.
Anyway. And all.
No.
And I just wanted
to
yeah, like it's cutting down a little bit, so I don't know. But we spoke earlier a little bit about like the importance of ecosystems over monopolies, and I just wanted you to like speak a little bit to that and what that might look like for a future film industry in the UK.
Well, here's the thing, Aliyah. This is a conversation for me and you to have, and our people to have personally. Like, I'm not going to be out here trying to solve problems for the system, because the system will only swallow what it is that we're doing and spit us back out. That's just my position on it. Like in terms of the current one that exists, everyone find, you know, hopefully we can find our ways within it, which as we've constantly been doing. But is it likely to change? If we look at history and we look at what we've been going through and what the systems have been doing to us, like, let's just talk about that ecosystem. Like, so, you know what we got to do? Just get on with it and do it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, let's not be out here on a parlise. Like, you know, it's not even worth it. Like, you know, and you know, what's that?
This is life's work. It's not going to be.
What's the point in parlaying? Do you know what I'm saying? Just, that's all long. Like, you know, I'm just kind of like, this is just like, what's the point, you know? Yeah, that's just my answer to that. I think those conversations need to be had in private amongst ourselves, in order to like fully figure it out. That's how I think. That's how I think it really needs to go.
100% agree. I'd also like,
and then we go from there. We move in it.
And that's what I mean. And there are some really interesting conversations with regard to like Black British filmmakers, creating some incredible like production companies and like films and things coming up. So, and they're again not trying to beg off the system, but just doing it and creating good work. I do think that not necessarily that there's a responsibility, but like it's different things need to be commissioned, like you said, like that nuance, like working in TV. Have you watched I Will Destroy You yet? Is it called I Will Destroy You, the new Michaela Cole thing? Okay, watch it. It's
just dropped. Yeah, where did it drop? On BBC?
Yeah, watch it and we'll discuss it, because like it's a lot. But I never thought I would see those things on iPlayer or in those conversations. The same with Enterprise. Super important work, but also not the only work that needs to be done. I'm very FUBU, and I feel like more bias is the only way forward to have complete autonomy.
I think FUBU is really important, because I think what then happens is that the narrative becomes co-opted. You know, and so, and co-opted for what reason? You know, you have to ask yourself that question as well. Like, you know, a system that has not been designed to help a specific group of people for so long, oh, all of a sudden we're going to start helping. I don't know. You
I
know,
don't
call
buy it.
me, you know, call me, you know, pessimistic. I'm very optimistic, but I'm optimistic within self-actualization, within that and that alone, because I feel like outside of that, you know, how much, you know, the cord of trust has long been broken. So you can't even use that cord. That you need even, pardon? I mean, shit, like Jigga's been out here trying to fix that thing and weld it back together for time and time again, and it's just like, actually, great. Like, I'm glad that those things exist on that platform, and you know, more for it, you know. But I think
it shouldn't be an end goal, or that we've made it.
What is the bigger plan, you know?
Yeah.
Here's the thing, Aliyah. Like, what is it? And one of my boys said this, right? I want to be careful how I say this, but there's certain communities that think about generations ahead. We're out here thinking about ourselves right now. There's people out here just thinking about, how am I going to pattern for today, pattern my thing, and how am I going to rise? But what about, do you get what I'm saying? And that's when you're talking about this future, you know, seeing what a future looks like. All of this work that we're making now is not for us.
Yeah.
Pardon?
The long-term vision instead of short-termism, and that being what we're kind of like stuck in because of capitalism and various different things. And
exactly, it gets you just looking at like what's here, and you're just like in a 50 Cent video, just like just like that, you know, just stuck here with what's in front of you. Do you know what I'm saying? And I'm kind of, you know, I'm not you know, I think we have to be very
greater than that.
Yeah, we have to. What's the end goal? I know everyone's got a different end goal, but you know, like I have this conversation with you offline.
That's fine.
The rest of this conversation privately.
That's the importance of visionaries in like this quote unquote revolution, or wherever we move forward, of being able to see that, because not all of us are able to see that, or like not be stuck in the survival mode or scarcity mentality that has been like we've been subjected to for so long. But I'm going to take some questions from the chat box. Hold tight, everyone who's been sending in questions. The first one is from Bing. Hold tight, Bing, I miss you. And she's interested, Bing, a real one, hold tight, 0121. Interested in how you prefer your work to be seen and experienced.
How I like to, sorry, say it again.
How you prefer your work to be seen and experienced.
Is that, yes, there's a preference in terms of, you know, saying, okay, it'd be great, like if you could watch the work in like in a space where it's projected onto, you know, because it's short form, saying cinema. Yes, it's made in, you know, in a cinematic way, and the language of some of the work is definitely cinematic, or pretty much all of the work is cinematic. There's visual language in there. There's certain nods to certain things, but I feel like it's always great when, you know, not everyone has the access to a projector. I've got a projector at home. You can watch the work on a projector, great. Like, but the key is that it's about us, isn't it? It's like, for me, the joy for me was when people were watching Entitled, and it was their mums that was watching it, and their aunties and their pups, and people were watching it together. And even if it was on your phone, that's where you felt this and it reached you. Like, as long as there's that sort of, there is that spiritual transfer, and that you felt the gift, and it was like, okay, it reached you. That's what I really care about. Like, you know, at the end of the day, because the world is changing. Yes, you know, I'm a filmmaker, and cinema is important to me. You know, the language of cinema, the concept of what cinema is, you know, and what filmmaking is, like the craft, all of that, like that stuff is like crucial. But because of the way in which our audiences come to the work, right? Because the work is unequivocally, like, and unashamedly for you know, us. And if anyone else comes to it and wants to come and participate, great, because that's the way in which the narratives that we have been fed and influenced by the larger system that sits above us operates too. It does not concern itself with all of us. It's like, this is what we're going to make. And so my approach is that, okay, this is what I'm going to make. If, you know, if it's Auntie watching it, you know, in Dulwich, or watching it in, you know, Tottenham, you know, or Young G watching it in Camberwell, like on his phone on the block with his brethren, like, cool, like consume it as you wish, as long as it reaches you and it transfers there. That's what.
That's the intention. Beautiful, beautiful. I also think it's like one of those things that once you put a piece of art out, you can't really like control not only how people take it, but then how they consume it. But like what is definitely going to happen is, like you said, the transferal of spirit and the retrieval of spirit through it. We've got another question from Shaheen. Hold tight, Shaheen, my G. And she says, how do you ground imagining in the spirit of who you are and what you believe?
Oof. How do I ground imagining in the spirit of who I am?
And what you believe.
That's interesting. Imagining in the spirit of who I am. I feel like most of the stuff that I'm doing, again, going back to the point of, you know, the work, yes, there will be, you know, film references, and, you know, I'll reference a particular artist, or, you know, I was, you know, because of documentaries where I started, a lot of the stuff that I was doing was looking at other people's work, but not heavily. Like, it was mainly, for example, the Maisel brothers, for example, like, you know, but looking at what they do and then trying to ground what they do and what I do really doesn't come from watching. It really comes from, you know, being present with self and just kind of, I guess, prayer, really. I don't know if I am answering this question correctly, but grounding myself within the work. I mean, if the person's asking about being grounded within the work, I feel like, you know, most of the stuff is really about people around me as well. Like, and, you know, like, I'm never really looking at, like, you know, a lot of people want to make documentaries and, oh, you know, it's with this celebrity, or it's like with this person who's up here. I'm really concerned with the people who are here, who I can look left to right from. And often, you know, and everyone is like that to me. Everyone is like that. I don't see anyone on, oh, you're up here and you're down there. Like, and so grounding myself in the process is really about that. Like, you know, because sometimes I am having to work with people who are names and all the rest of it. But like, does that matter to me? Not really, no. Like, and, you know, it helps. I feel like it helps being a personable person.
Yeah.
Like, you can see, like, when you met me and I met you, like, what do? We just bust joke and just chat shit in it. Like, do you get what I mean? And for me, that's the key. Like, at the end of the day, no matter where you are in the world of what you're doing, you know, this concept of what we do, oftentimes, like I said to you, the only reason why I'm doing this because it's you, and, you know, there's certain things that I'm just not really, I can't be arts with all of the prancing around and all the rest of it, because there's the work to be done. And the only way I can do the work is by not engaging with all of the rest of it. You know, it's really hard. Am I succeeding? Sometimes no, but the majority of the time, that's, you know, I am, and that's the intention. So I feel like grounding myself within the work comes from just chilling with my brethren, you know, like, and there's certain things I have to admit, when I went to film school and, you know, went to uni, the people that I was, actually, when I was still at uni, I was still chilling with certain brethren, you know, like on different kind of crud. You know what I'm saying? And so I can only explain that in that kind of way to you. And so
it's also, you
know,
like that's so important, because so often we like go into
that's so important to the work. That stuff is
like
so,
not even just
totally.
the work, but our own sanity and spirituality, to not like execute,
exactly,
because we then see like this way that we should be being. Well, actually, all of our knowledge production is valid. All of our ways of being are valid, and it's really
I think it's important.
It has to be.
I think it's important because the thing is that, you know, oftentimes, and not because of what the system makes you think, you know, is that, you get me? And people are like, no, but you're not. Like, bro, like, you stay at the steady pace. This is a long road, you know. What goes up must come down.
It's like
so
I said earlier,
stay steady.
And all
we're
doing at this moment is just holding the baton. All we're doing at this moment is just holding the baton, like people came before us, like documentary.
Exactly. You're just here to pass the thing on, you know.
Exactly, and make sure that there's a vision for it to last.
You're just here to do
200 years
relay.
Instead of a little bit. Exactly.
You're just here to do relay, like, but certain people out here trying to do 100 meters. You know what I'm saying? And that's the problem, like, you know, and the system will sell 100 meters to you, not knowing that when you're seeing man like Mo Farah do long distance, these things are long. It's a long distance.
Training his whole life. He's been training his whole life.
Been training his whole life.
Like the sacrifice. But thank you so much for joining me today. Like, it's been a lot. I'm sure we will like cackle and catch up a lot more with regards to some of the other things we spoke about. But this has been magic. I just wanted to thank you for coming on and
Sorry, say that again.
I just wanted to thank you for joining me today and like sharing your films, sharing your mind. And if there's any like last thoughts that you want to pass on before we like tell people deuces.
Well, I guess sorry, go on. Oh, okay. I guess, you know, as a parting thought, let's just be closer to, you know, everyone's been trying to be closer to self. Most of the people that I've been around during this period of, you know, lockdown and everything, it's forced people to come closer to themselves. But like, I think it's also important to come close back to look at how and what it is that you will do to impart what being closer to yourself means for you, but for other people as well. What will you give? What is it that you will do for others, you know, and not for yourself? Because it's great that we've been going through this moment, but like, you know, there is something in that, especially with the work that we're seeing from all of these artists, you know, and big ups to Sil, you know, she's been out here for a minute and her work is just, it's incredible. Like, I mean, the film that you were going to show, I've already seen it as well. And I love what she's been doing, you know. I think, you know, the way in which she sort of sits within who she is and just brings that to the table and her experiences, and that film really does that, you know, beautifully. And, you know, that sort of concept of, you know, the banal and the mundane of who we are as a people. Like, she really, she's just ridiculous, like, at doing that. And so I'm excited by her. Pardon?
I was gonna say, she patterned it from like 2012. I grew up watching Strolling, Aki Saltfish, all of those things, and like, they were groundbreaking at the time, and she was completely ahead of her time for those people who weren't already consuming that stuff. But like, we're only starting to see those dialogues she was talking about way back when.
Exactly.
Now.
Exactly, and it's, you know, in the same, you know, token of note, you know, I've now seen you know, second one of Baloji's films, but again, you know, what he's trying to sort of communicate is really important, and these are you know, these are artifacts for the future. Like, these are things that people will be fed on, hopefully, you know, and these are the types of narratives that exist, and it's important, you know, because actually he's best placed to tell that story, as is Cecile. Just basically more of that, and, you know, at the end of the day, those are their offerings, right? But not everyone's a filmmaker, right? It's cool, like, but what will you give? What is it that we will see from you? Like, you know, like, what is it that we will, and what will the future, what will, if it was a time capsule, what would people see? What would you leave for people? And so this is it. I think this is the key for us now, like, you know, figuring out like this moment beyond ourselves and even beyond our children and our children's children. This is how we have to think about this thing, because there are certain communities that's their thought process naturally. and I am talking about the Black community. I'm talking about the African community.
Sorry, like I was like, wait, what?
The
like,
diaspora community. I'm talking about all of us.
Mm.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. No, I was just saying, like, of course we're talking about the Black community. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's it. Yeah, like I don't know who else on this thing, but just so them know, innit? Yeah, I just spitting it real, innit? Do you know what I mean? So, but yeah, so I feel like it's like, yeah, you ask yourself the question, not even just act upon it. Say I'm gonna do this, and you know, I've already sat with myself, of, you know, called upon spirit about what it is that I need to do, and I'm quietly just doing it as well. And and I think that's the key, and that's what I want to leave with everyone. Like, just do something, because it's very real out here, you know. So, and if we don't do, then ain't nothing happening. So that's it. That's what I would say, as a parting thought, and all the rest of it.
Thank you so much, my G. Hold tight, you. Everyone, if you haven't already watched...
You're very welcome.
Huh? If you haven't already watched Adeyemi's films, where can we find you? Like, stalking online or films-wise? Like...
you can just find me. I mean, I'm active on Instagram. I'm there on Twitter, but I'm not like
barely,
you know, a tweeter. Yeah, I'm barely a tweeter. So yeah, you can find me there, man, and just, you know, see what I'm up to, and I'll see what you're up to, hopefully. And then you can find me at our functions, you know. You know, the things that we're doing and what we're pushing. And so that's spaces and in those places. And big up to the people that are coming up as well. There's some really amazing filmmakers, both in, you know, on the continent in Africa, you know, like States, that I'm just really like, again, just looking side to side and being like, oh, these are the irons that will sharpen my iron, no? And especially here in the UK too. And so you just have to look for it as well. And, you know, let's just raise each other up, innit? You know,
100%.
Just try and push it.
On that note, who would you raise up now? So who would you tell people to go? And
that's a very good question. There's a guy, who would I raise up right now? There's a guy in Niger called Dafe Oburu. Big up Dafe. I think Dafe, he's making certain types of films at the moment, and I'm just like, those films are good, but what you're doing is already, you're somewhere else. And you could really, if you applied yourself to, you know, this particular message, you could say so much more. I think there's another filmmaker who I'm very excited about. I think he's visual, what he's doing visually, like, his work is timeless. When you watch it, you're just like timeless. And his name is Akinola Davis. And mainly he's worked in fashion and music videos, and he's starting to come over to more sort of narrative. But I know he's not just going to do narrative, he's going to do it in his way, that exists beyond that type of form. Who else? There's a lot. Oh, do you know what? Visual artists. There's this, and I've been following her for a minute. Her name is Jatavia Gari. She's based in the US. Who else? Garrett Bradley. There is here. There is what was the name I was gonna pull out? There's bare people here. There's not. You know when they tell you about the UK, and then, oh, there's no one here. Like,
there's not.
There's names. There's enough people, and so Caleb Femi is another one. People don't know it yet, but like, he is one for like the future. Like, he is very, very Caleb Femi. Yeah. He's a poet, but like, and an artist, but we've got some stuff. You know, he's incredible. Who else? It's hard to think off the top of my head, but like I have got a list of people that I'm watching, and definitely, you know, there's people like Thomasin Adepiju. There's, you know, I feel like Thomasin's voice, he's trying to hone it now. You know, and there's loads of us that do. Everyone's constantly trying to hone. You know, at the minute, I think Kobe's voice is very important. Kobe Doom.
He did that.
Dion knows. She is so important to us. She is like really important. Like she's really, really saying stuff. And just her writing is just so good. There's a couple other people. I had it in my head before, and no shade, it's not even like that. It's just like, man's just drawing blanks right now. But like there's a ton of people.
We'll share a list.
There's a ton of people. Ajani Salmon's another one. Salmon, he's another one. Yes. I think he's going to step into
back in it. He did Dream of
Yeah, he's another one. He's another one as well. And so there's bare people, trust me.
And we'll hopefully share a list.
And there's another one on my birthday, Ade. He's about to drop some stuff. But like, I feel like I'm just doing best. You know, like when you're at a rave, you're a function, and then with the microphone, you're just picking up bare man. You're picking up bare man and girl.
No, but it's that's what this is the work we need to do. But, it's all of us. It's all of us out here. But thank you so much. We'll get a list and we'll share it with the peoples then. But on the note of Heaux Femi, he's also part of this festival, and we'll be doing our next like film night thing called looking at the visions of music videos and how music videos like that we saw when we were younger, or
he's very special, that guy.
The future
Remember I said it, he's very special, that guy. He's like the moment he starts, he is a special guy, that one. And the thing is that you know, he just dropped a couple things on people. When the thing lands, or the couple of things that he's doing land, you know, and he's still, because everything's an exercise, especially with short form. That's the thing about short form. I feel like it's an opportunity to exercise a specific muscle. And so, you know, like everyone is in training right now. Like certain men are just benching, just the bar right now. And you're seeing the work and you're thinking, right, like, what's that? But man just picked up the bar, man didn't even put weights on it yet. So it's just like, by the time you know, you just seeing bare people just looking all buff or just thinking, this is crazy. And so I'm very excited by a lot of these people. But I think the key for them is really sits outside the mainstream system and the structures that we understand them to be at the moment. And that's why I love Cecile, because she broke that, and you know, she went around, and there's several other filmmakers like that as well.
Pace for so many of us moving forward.
We're just going around the system. Yeah.